Adrian was backstage getting his groove on. I love it.
Good
Hello,
music.
everybody.
Good
Yeah,
morning. Good
this is my
morning.
favorite. I don't think I'm ever gonna change it. You know how they're like, you should change every couple of years. I'm like, that's not changing. I love it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right.
Exactly.
As long as Harris Heller keeps it free, I'm using it, which
Yeah.
he's promised that he will. So,
Like if I ever did a trivia game of the music matching with the YouTube person, like that is yours. Like I will always think of that as yours.
I love it so much. I use it for everything. All right, guys. Welcome to Scripting the Book. We are doing part 2 of Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire. We have a special guest joining us today, Adrian from Books by Adrian, who is an amazing person. All my co-hosts and guest hosts are listed below, so click on their links, like their channels, and subscribe, watch their videos. They've got awesome, awesome things. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it, starting with our special guest, Adrian, and swinging it back around.
All right. Thank you very much. Adrian Santiago here, Books by Adrian. Fair warning, there's a fair bit of street noise right outside my window, so I'm going to be writing my mute button. If I do that thing I do where I forget that I'm muted, just, shout at me. I'll figure it out. I'm an author. I wrote these books. This is a short story prologue that leads into this, which is my debut novel, Shadow of the Spark. It's a murder mystery set in a sci-fi fantasy world. Kicks off a whole series. And if you would like to pick that up, you can do so pretty much anywhere. I am everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, whatever you want. I'm in libraries. I'm everywhere. Look me up. booksbyadrian.com if you need it. I also do signed, personalized copies. Ebooks are also available. And come to my channel. Check it out. I love to interview other authors on that channel and explore the community and learn about this weird thing that we do where we sit in front of a keyboard and clack away. So this is one of my favorite shows, Game of Thrones. It's definitely my favorite fantasy series, A Song of Ice and Fire. And I have a lot of thoughts about this second half of the show, and I can't wait to tear it apart with you guys.
All right. I love that. Good, Ben.
Awesome. I am Ben Pick with Running to Write, where every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. This past week, I talked about my marketing failures this past year in 2023. And coming up tomorrow, tomorrow I am doing, let's see here. Sorry, I have it up. There we go. Talking about mystery boxes, what to do when opening them and how to close them well. I also, much like today's episode, I throw a lot of shade at what used to be a cultural phenomenon, a specific show which I have gone on record as saying that I used to love and no longer like. Adrian, bad news for you. I'm going to probably be breaking your heart with some of the things I say about Game of Thrones.
No, probably not. I'm probably going to say a lot worse.
Right. He's also probably not heard it all.
Yeah.
I'm also an author, but let's move on to somebody else now.
Good, Natalie.
Hi. Don't worry, this is not a special guest. He was not a viewing buddy either.
Good parenting.
He should not be, yeah.
Did not read to him that story at night. I do read Bluey at nightly, so no worries there. Oh, and by the way, he said, you're funny, Adrian.
That's the highest praise I can get from a child. Thank
exactly. Like for the longest time before he said I love you, it was you're funny. Like that was his I love you, and I thought it was adorable. So either way, if you haven't guessed yet, I'm a mom. My
what?
Grader, it was not immaculate conception or anything. My 7th grader is in the kitchen scrounging for food. Thank God she doesn't need me for that. This one already tackled me this morning. And but in other news, because we're talking about writing, I and myself and Chandra Arthur have a prompt book coming out in June 2024. So excited for that.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'm happy for it, and it's gonna be with prompts, stickers in the back to pick your words to put with the prompt, and writing challenges that you can pair with it to help better yourself as a writer. Because That's what we believe is like challenge yourself, but don't challenge yourself with a novel. Let's challenge yourself with a flash fiction.
I like
learn the challenge and get better that way.
That sounds great. I'm excited.
Speaking of children.
And I'm Nia, the Vixen of Fiction. You are here on my channel. I host writing and productivity sprints on Tuesday nights, so you can catch that. I also host this fantastic thing that I do with Natalie and Ben, who are my awesome book club buddies. And I host another show. We do Author Tears React, where we talk about all the things that have been going on in the writing and book kids community, and that's coming back in September. So you can stay tuned for that. But this is probably one of my favorite things to do because I love reading books, and I'm a sucker for adaptations because I love to see what someone else's ideas come from the book. Like if I could put a book to screen, what would I do? What would I want it to look like? How would I envision it? So I love to see other people's what the creators and the producers come up with, how they see someone's written work, put to live action or animation. So I love this. I love talking, and I'm so glad I found people who like to talk about it with me. So that's why we do this. And today we are going to talk about a Game of Thrones episode, or the second half of the book series that's not finished yet. We can talk about that later too. So we're going to talk about books 3 and 4, and then episodes of the show 4 through the finale, episode 8 or season 8.
And
So
book 5.
Oh yeah, yes, and book 5. Yes, book 4 and 5. Oh, you know what? I just gave a spoiler because the reason why I didn't include 5. Let's get right to it. But yes, definitely 5. We are going to let me find my things. First, on the books 4 and 5. Where did you fall? Dislike, neutral, like, or love? Anybody a dislike? Anyone a neutral? Got a neutral? Anyone a like?
A like for book 4. I love book 5, but I like book 4.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm a neutral to like, but we'll also talk about that in a minute. And love?
Book 5.
Love book 5.
It's one
All
of my
right.
favorites.
Did we have anybody DNF either book 4 or book 5? Any DNFs?
I finished book 4, but I didn't even start book 5 because I finished book 4 a week ago. And and then my library didn't have it available. I've been second in line for like the whole month for the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the same. I have not started book 5 yet, but I plan to keep going.
It's on my to-do list.
Yes, I overestimated. I read a lot of fantasy, so I really thought
These are big books.
Yeah, I was like, no problem.
I think 5 is the biggest.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that 4 and 5 are actually one book. He had to split it up into 2 because it's enormous,
Yes.
but you can read them as one book. There's a reading order that you can find online that tells you what chapters go before and after each, and you could conceivably read them as one book.
Oh, one book.
It's
Yeah.
insane, but it works.
When I looked, I'm like, this is because I always hybrid read. So I'm like, it's 33 hours just for what we consider book 4. I'm like, what? So it's crazy, but I was like, oh, no problem when I first started this. And the fact that I barely finished I finished them all for the last one, but barely. And then I thought, oh no, I've got deadlines in August. What was I thinking? So I was like, well, I just said, make sure I get through that one. And then if I have time, I'll get through 5. But yeah, I came right up on the line. So I was like, okay, it's a DNF, but temporarily. Now I'm so invested. I need to know what was different, what changed. So I will definitely be reading the next book and looking forward to possible, maybe
Right.
them finishing, if George R.R. Martin will finish the series, which I too have now.
He'll probably finish. We'll finish book 5 before he finishes.
I've
So-
been.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go
I-
ahead,
I-
Adrian. You got all the deep.
Well, I was just going to say that for the longest time, I have been this like pillar of like positive thinking when it comes to will he, won't he finish the series. I really, really hope that he does. But recently somebody said something to me that crystallized the reason why he's not going to finish. And it was this. They explained to me, all right, so imagine that you're telling a joke to a crowded room full of people, and you're going through the joke and you're building up to the punchline, right? And you know that this punchline is just gonna knock them dead. Like, you just know this is a hilarious joke, right? And you're going through it, and just before you get to the punchline, somebody in the room says it before you, and now everybody has, but they don't have the delivery that you have. They just say the punchline and ruin your joke. And now everybody knows how the joke ends, but they're still looking to you because they want to hear how you would have done it, because you were delivering it well, and they want you to finish the joke. How do you finish that joke now? Somebody has ruined it for you. Everyone knows how it ends, and they'd hate how it ended, and now they want you to do it better.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna finish it. Like, I'm starting, like, my heart is like
I
crushed.
think there's a chance.
There's
Even
a
with
chance.
the same ending. With the same ending, because we'll go into differences later of like how it could have been better. But a book is the perfect medium to
I agree.
convey that.
And there are hints.
Show somebody's change in emotions. Yes.
Yeah, and it hints. There are hints that he might, and this is a big might, but he might be publishing it next year. There's a cover floating around that was created by the same guy who does his covers normally. So everybody's like, that's a pretty big sign that something is happening, something is moving. So I don't know, maybe, but I don't know how I would do it if I was in his position. That's for sure. It's
I don't either, especially because now you've heard all the criticism. You've seen so many ways where people have said, if it was mine, I would have done it like this. Yeah. That's got to be a little bit in your head too.
And not just that, but he gave the showrunners some information to go with. He gave them some of the things that happened in the ending, and then
he gave them the cliff notes though.
Yeah, but then they go and they did those things very poorly. So now when he does those things, he has to like really knock them out of the park, because we're going to be seeing stuff that we already saw and we already hated.
Yeah.
And he's got to do it again. And then of course there's the whole, do I change things? Do I make it different? But if I change things, I wasn't leading up to these changes before, and it's not going to gel. So I have to do what I was planning. It's got to be really frustrating for him. I can't imagine being in the position that he's in. That's as an author. Yeah, that's rough.
I mean,
that dump truck of money kind of helps ease.
I'm sure he sleeps fine. Yeah,
laughing his tears with the $100 bill. I'm sure.
Yeah. No, that much is true. But the book is probably not. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'm going to be hopeful, because the whole reason why I didn't read them is because I'm like, I can't read a series like this and not have an ending. But I'm doing it now, and I'm just like, oh gosh, please finish this. I need it, because I really didn't like the ending, and it could have been just execution, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Let's
like the end.
Okay. But I know people didn't like it for different reasons, but we'll get into our reasons for not liking it.
And all those reasons are valid and accurate.
Absolutely.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I have lots of things to say about all that. Yes.
So what were our thoughts on the book series, book 4 and book 5? Do you want to just give your general thoughts on each book individually? Because I know, Adrian, yours seem pretty different for a book. So we'll go ahead and let you start. What do you think of book 4, and then what do you think of book 5?
So, first of all of these books have incredible titles as far as I'm concerned. The fact that book 4 is called The Feast for Crows is just brilliant. There's a lot about this book that I like. There's a lot that I feel like I have to get through when I read it. The Brienne chapters, for example, are a real slog for me. Only because while you're reading them, you know where she should be looking, and she's in the wrong place altogether, and it's incredibly frustrating. Now, the thing with Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons is that, as I said earlier, they were originally meant to be one book, but it was just too big. So he ended up splitting the story by region. He had everything going on in Westeros on one end, and then he had everything going on beyond the wall and in Essos on the other one. And by splitting these two geographically, you are limited to what characters you have to work with. So Jon Snow is very minimal in Feast for Crows. He's there at the very beginning, and then you don't see him again. And a Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, without Jon Snow, it's a little weird. It's a little weird, you know. But there is a lot to love in A Feast for Crows. There's a lot that he's building up to, and as far as the way that the two books line up, Feast for Crows is maybe runs for 2/3, and then Dance of Dragons runs for that same 2/3, and then finishes the last third. So there's a lot of wrap up to Feast for Crows found in A Dance of Dragons. So it's one of those things where, like, if you feel a little underwhelmed by A Feast for Crows, or you feel a little disappointed by it, my recommendation is always to dive right into A Dance of Dragons, because by the time you get to the end of that, Feast for Crows gets elevated a little bit and it feels a little better. And some of the things that were hanging at the end of that start getting wrapped up. Much of these two books are things that were cut out of the show, so it feels like a very different experience than what you see on the show. George Martin famously left the show after season 4. He was no longer in the writer's room. So from season 5 onward, they were on their own. And that's where the differences between the two become incredibly vast. So for anyone who has, mixed or bad feelings about the second half of the Game of Thrones series, just know that the books are much better, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot for me reading book 4 and having not read book 5 yet. I'm like, okay, that explanation actually makes a lot of sense. I'm like kind of sluggish. It felt like the soggy middle a little bit. So I'm like, oh, is this really the middle? And that's why we need the next book and then for him to wrap it up. Because it was like that part where you like, and I know things are going to happen because we've got the whole series. But I'm like, we're kind of like slugging through this. That's why I'm more of a neutral to like. There are parts that I like, but a lot of it was just kind of like, let's just get through this.
The other part to that is the fact that his original plan for the series was 3 books, and then that plan evolved into 5 books, and then that plan evolved into 7. And so the first 3 books feel very similar to each other. They feel very cohesive. They flow very well one into the next. And it almost feels like it should have been a trilogy. And then when you get to book 4, it feels like you're at a new starting point. It's like, he was supposed to do a big time jump, but then he decided not to. So he goes back, and now it feels like he's starting like a new phase of the story from the beginning. And so it might feel like the soggy middle. To me, it feels like a very slow new beginning. And it doesn't really like pick up until Dance of Dragons. And, that's where you get into like the second act of this second, half. So, it's a little weird, but that's writing.
Thank you for I feel like in my head things are like, damn it, okay, it's
clicking now. It's clicking. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, why does this book feel like this? But okay, we're gonna get through it. It's not bad, but it's like, come on. Like, what am I waiting for here? Come on, a little bit. So Ben, your thoughts on books 4 and 5?
I had a different reaction altogether. I was the opposite, where I liked to be fair, I didn't particularly like either of these books. I felt like both of them were very big slogs, but I like book 4 more than I like book 5, because book 4 is the aftermath, but it's the aftermath of these massive battles, and you have all this conniving. And then book 5 was just like, hey, Khaleesi doesn't know how to lead a country, and now that she has, an army, she has like all this stuff, everything is going her way, but I can see why it did it, and let's not go into spoilers of where things go, but these are these are cracks in every single character's armor. You know, we see the lead up to where Jaime goes on a redemption arc. We see Tyrion becoming a brilliant tactician, which was sort of hinted at in the first half of the series, and now sort of carries through to like, wow, he knows what he's doing. He would actually be a good leader, and no one respects him. So,
Yep.
you know, and you get all these plot lines which you can tell are going nowhere. Shaggy Dog. They actually call I at this point I forget what his name is, but the younger Stark brother.
Rickon.
Yeah.
Thank you. They actually call him. They actually name his dog Shaggy Dog, which is like a writing term for something which goes nowhere, like a plot point which goes nowhere. And so
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. That's like,
that makes sense, though.
When I stop talking, I'm going to double check that, because there are parts of the story which feel like they go nowhere, which we can tell are going to go nowhere. And this book series, it makes sense that it started off at one book and then sort of just exploded into a voluminous 2. And even then, like 1,000 pages is a doorstop. Like, that is not a book that is enjoyable to read. That is way too much text going on in there when it could be cut in half. Like, this, spoiler alert for a future series, but like Wheel of Time has, it's an incredible book. It's an incredible series, but I do recommend people skip books 5 through 8 because not a whole lot happens. There's one shiny moment throughout those 1,500 pages, but aside from that, like, I liked some of the Jon Snow moments, but again, at this point, it was blatantly clear where things are going with some of that storyline. And so, I don't know. I feel like book 4 was interesting, and then book 5 was kind of just spiraling out into too many different stories that could reasonably entertain me. Is probably
I'm with you on all this, because I honestly think that he should have stuck to his guns and done that time jump that he wanted to do, and picked up the story 5 years later, which I believe was the plan, and we would have skipped all of this little preamble. But
so a shaggy dog, according to Merriam-Webster, is of, relating to, or being a long drawn out circumstantial story concerning an inconsequential happening that impresses the teller as humorous or interesting, but the hearer as boring and pointless.
That's so interesting. I never knew that,
Wow.
but it makes sense for Rickon and Shaggy Dog. Like that, that makes perfect, because they don't go anywhere. That story goes nowhere. I mean,
yeah, the TV show handles it very well.
Well,
we'll get to that, because I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not saying that you might be right, because Natalie, what were your thoughts? You read book 4. You didn't get to book 5 yet.
I actually like book 4. We got out of the 3 books before, we actually got into Cersei's mind, and I'm always a fan of somebody saying something but thinking something else, and like I just love that in writing. So big fan of that. Brienne's I actually still loved, because it was kind of the same deal, and even though I know where she was supposed to be, and I could see a little bit of the, like, which Stark girl are we talking about situation mix up, I still enjoyed it because there was still conflict with her, like with the robbers and such, and then one of the ones she had to kill and stuff, and then her getting captured and stuff like that. I still enjoyed her storyline, and I think it comes from already knowing what happens in the show. And for me, Bran is the worst storyline still, so anytime I get anybody other than Bran, I'm okay. I know how bad it could be. For me, Bran wasn't Shaggy Dog, but could have, yeah.
I agree. I really did enjoy seeing more of Cersei, even though I can't stand her.
She's so fun to read.
I mean, man, I could read her all day, but man, I can't stand her.
And she does everything for her kids too. it makes her more relatable too.
It's her one redeeming quality. It's her one redeeming quality. But otherwise, she is batshit crazy up here, and it's so fun to read. She's out of her mind.
That is Joffrey's mom right there.
Oh my god,
that is Joffrey's mom. How she got the other two, I don't know who they came after, but she is Joffrey's mom 100%. And yeah. So, and I liked seeing her thoughts about Marjorie, because we don't really get a Marjorie perspective.
Right.
In the books, we get Marjorie as Cersei is seeing her, and just like she's always smiling and she thinks she's this, and it's just like, whoa. Whoa, my goodness, her thoughts on, and just with everyone, even with her father's death, seeing what she's thinking, going through.
She's always thinking about how it affects her. Like, no matter what's going on, it's all about. She is such a narcissist, and it's so juicy to read, man. Like, I love those chapters.
Yeah. So that was good. Bronn, and then there's Brienne, and I really do like Brienne. Sometimes it did feel meandering, but I like her as a character, and I like Natalie said it could have something to do with the fact that I don't picture who George R.R. Martin is writing, because the actress she's very, very tall, and but she's a very pretty lady, and I pictured her like that, because they almost like people wouldn't see that because she's so big and she's so skilled. So I that's how I see it. Like if you see like a female wrestlers, the ones that aren't decked out in makeup, or the bodybuilders, and then you see them in public and you're like, well, that you don't look the same out of your workout clothes. That's how I imagine her. They can only see her one way. So that's who I see. So when he's even describing how ugly she thinks that she is, I'm like, but you're not, girl.
That's the thing, is that she thinks that about herself. Like, nobody really ever describes her.
Exactly. So I'm like, nobody does, and she still falls in the same situations when people once they get over her height, they're like, lady, you're a lady.
Yeah, she was definitely traumatized as a kid by a bunch of bullies and stuff. Yeah,
but that doesn't necessarily mean like she is ugly, but I can see how that became inward monologue for her.
Especially Brienne. I love her character. I want to emphasize that, even though I'm not a big fan of her chapters, I love her character. The thing with Brienne is that as you said, as big and as skilled as she is, I'm sure that she grew into herself, and she probably walks with a fair bit of confidence in herself, and that can be very attractive. So I really think that now, as an adult, her biggest hater is herself, and like it's a bummer.
Yeah, it is a bummer. But I feel like you when you're reading her through those chapters, you see that. So I that's why I could appreciate them, even though some of them I was like, okay, well, she's not even close to where she needs to be, and she's looking for the wrong, she's totally on. But it's like I'm enjoying it. I love her fight scenes and the whole thing. So a lot of it, I was like, that's why I felt kind of neutral. I'm like, this is okay, but I like this character a lot. But the story, it's just okay. It's happening. So yeah, those are really. And so now I'm like, I really wish I'd been able to get through 5, seeing the varying opinions on book 5. I'm like, I feel like I must read this now, but I'm still on a deadline. So as soon as deadline's over, I'm diving right into it.
Good.
Just because I need.
I'm gonna need a month off a script in the book to catch up on.
Yeah, it's a big one. It ends really strong.
Yeah. Anybody got any other thoughts on books 4 or 5 before we get on to the TV series, and then we'll start, comparing them. We good to go? Excellent. Oh, before we get on to our thoughts, let's do dislike, neutral, like, or love. And if you feel like you need to break it down, Like when we get to dislike, neutral, like, and love. If you raise your hand for something and you're like, oh, seasons this and this, we can do that. Anyone dislike on 4, 5, or 5, 6, 7, or 8? Dislike. All right, which ones are? I'm gonna raise my hand as a dislike strongly on 8. Adrian.
If I'm gonna break it down, it literally goes in order. So like season 5 is where the cracks started showing. It has the first episode that I can point to and say that's a bad Game of Thrones episode. It's the first time that it's happened in the whole first 4 seasons. I don't think there was a bad episode. Season 5 had the first truly bad episode of Game of Thrones, and then each season the number of bad grew and the number of good shrunk. So 5 was better than 6, which was better than 7, and nothing is as bad as 8. So yeah.
All right, so let's do it individually. So any of the seasons you're alike on, did any of them hit like?
Not really. There are moments, and there are episodes that I really like all throughout, including season 8. But no. As a whole, each season they're all dislikes.
They're all dislikes. Gotcha. Ben, how about you? Where are you?
I'm sort of the same, where I think they progressively get worse until we just fall off a cliff. But I do disagree in that I liked season 5. I don't see any. I can't point to any single episode. I don't see the cracks in season 5 and season 6.
I'll show them to you.
We're about to hear them.
That's completely fair. My point is that like I love those absolutely. I love 5. I love 6. I can't point to moments where I really didn't like them. I mean, there are some, again, plot threads that go nowhere. There are some details that don't work, but the acting is so well done.
Oh, yeah.
The passion is so much there that I don't even care. Like, it could be them literally sitting there with a script in hand, just reading it and emoting from there, and I would have been happy. But again, that drop off in season 8 is so bad that any moments of love in season 5 and 6 retroactively become a dislike or even worse. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How about you, Natalie? I'm going to give her a second.
Yeah, sorry, that's my oldest. She snuck by. But really, you haven't asked anything. What do you need? I need a camera for if I'm filming anything. Can I get back to this? I know you like filming. You tried to film me one time, and everyone complained about how shaky the camera was.
Future
yeah,
producer.
There was a video that I posted out, and I had to write at the bottom. I was like, Spencer wanted the camera. And it's funny because I'm talking, and I'm like, I'm following the camera. I'm like, yep. And because he started going lower. So I'm like, and we're going to cut this scene here.
He was working something out there. He's like,
this is going to be more interesting. And he wasn't lying. It was more interesting. So give me 2 seconds, buddy. I like across the board because I watched this without reading any of it, and I did see the faults in season 8. But from a I don't want to downplay anyone who hasn't read the books, but from like just a viewership, like general audience, like it still works. You still see the faults. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, they could have fleshed out some more internal conflict before jumping areas here. Bless you.
Chew.
Here, hold on.
I love kids.
Okay. But other than that, I'd still like overall and everything. If season 8 was stronger, it could have been a love. But there was, for me, I really like this because we got the House of Black and White, if I remember names correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that really got into the different religions, which I thought was interesting. It's more of appreciation of the world building across.
And I can totally see that. I even have aspects of that myself, where as the writer, you see the faults in it, but as a viewer, as a TV viewer, there's a lot to still enjoy about those last 4 seasons. Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah. And so I fall at neutral to dislike. Dislike season 8 like there were some highlights in that season 8, but
yeah.
the things that I did not like completely over. I mean, like, man, the things I did not like completely overshadowed anything that I did like. Like, I almost didn't remember the things I liked until I rewatched it, and
Yeah.
that was the other thing was I watched it the first time through, and I would say I really liked it until season 8. Like,
Mhm.
I hadn't read the books yet, so I didn't know. And now reading the books, I really, really don't like
Yeah.
season 8. Like, it didn't make it better. And
No.
then the things that I thought were alike, some of those scooched down to a neutral.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and I haven't even finished book 5. Like, this is just from book 4. Things
Yeah.
are already that I like, they're scooching down to neutral. So I'm like, oh man, you mean we could have had this going on in with Dorn, but we got
Oh my God! Don't get me started on Dorn. Sorry. Go ahead.
mean. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Might need an Advil. It's like there's a mountain pushing into her forehead.
Yeah, it's the Dorn stuff is it's so bad on the show. In fact, that's the episode that I was talking about. In season 5, there's an episode called Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, and it's where Jamie and Bronn go to Dorn, and God, it's awful. It's just when you read about Dorn in the books, it's an incredible location, and the story is so complex there. And they just shaved all of that off, and they put Jamie in a costume, and it was just weird. And the gardens were completely empty, and they're just like sneaking around in broad daylight. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what am I
Yeah, I'm like,
watching right now?
how
It
did
was
they
the
get
worst.
there?
It
The
was the
Prince
worst.
and Marcella are there, but they were Jamie and Brom were able to get there, no problem. To be able to attack them, and we're only stopped because the sand snakes were there to get them first. I'm like,
Oh, and the sand snakes.
security.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't know how we want to break this down. Let's go. Let's try the good thoughts on the world building and the characters. So, and then execution. So for me, the world building, I think that for a lot of it, they're still doing a really good job. As same as they were through season 1, where I think that the world building kind of like fell through the cracks. One of them was with everything going on in Dorne. I'm like, Dorne, and even with the Tyrells, like I feel like I wanted more. I wanted to see more of like the Tyrells are ruling over this place. It's got all this money, all of this, it's supposed to be the best of the best. They're the richest. I'm like, how I feel like you're just telling me.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. In the books, Dorne is the one kingdom that was never conquered by Aegon the Conqueror. They came into the Union by choice. They were never conquered, and so they have that reputation of just being this impregnable place. That their heroes are legendary. They have the Sword of the Morning. Like it's a whole thing down there, and the way that it was just kind of hand wavy, like written off in the show. It's ugh. Not a fan.
How you been with? Oh,
Sorry, just to piggyback on what you were saying with the world building, I think that the main place where the world building falls apart in the show is especially the later seasons 7 and 8, where people just kind of start teleporting everywhere. They cut out all of the travel time, and on one hand, I understand why they do that. And we had 6 seasons of being with our characters every second of and every step of the way. I understand how now they're like, well, you understand what the travel is like. Let's just get to the destination. However, they don't add in the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, let's go to Dorne, and the next episode they're in Dorne, and it's like, we should have had an episode where they just weren't there. So they were traveling during this episode. Like they're just teleporting everywhere, and it was just, I mean, what's it, Varys?
Oh, it's even he's
Varys
even
is
worse
everywhere.
because he goes all the
He's
way
worse.
to not West to Essos,
Essos,
and
yeah.
and
And he just pops back up in
it is
Winterfell or wherever.
it
like,
is months of travel between those
Mhm.
two. Like winter would have come and gone in the time
Yeah.
it took him to go all the way over there. And like it's not even just landing in Bravos or something like that. He goes all the way into like deep
Oh yeah, he goes in there.
like in the books, Tyrion is traveling for like half a book
Yeah.
to get all the way over there. And like you said, Viserys goes across the ocean.
Yeah, you blink and
back,
they're there. Yeah.
and in an episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of instant teleportation going on.
Yeah. And again, like I get what they're trying to do with it, but they were just fumbling the whole thing.
Yeah,
well, and it was had different characters.
Oh, go ahead, Ben. They had different characters.
No, I was going to say they could have resolved it by using different characters or having somebody else to fill those roles, but I don't know.
I mean, honestly, it could have been as simple as, and they've done it in the past, where, for example, in season 7, there's an episode where at the very end, Jon Snow makes the decision to go and meet Daenerys, and that's how that episode ends. And the next episode begins with him arriving on her shores, and I'm like, you could have just had an episode here doing something else with other characters and come back to this the following episode after that, and we would understand, okay, we skipped over the travel time.
Yeah, I think it's because they had 8 episodes, so they were trying to make sure no one was
by their own damn choice, though. It was their
why?
chose to do that. They didn't have to, and that's the problem. Is the fact that
they could have done more.
The timeline. Yeah, and like you were saying, like we need like an episode without them if you're not going to show them traveling, because it felt like like the timelines weren't meshing. Like, okay, it seems like it's the same day for these people.
Yeah, it was in some cases.
Yeah.
Like
I'm like, are they on the same day? And now they've gotten from here to there to there.
Like it was cool with the comet where we saw everybody looking up or everybody doing their own thing and then looking up and seeing the comet, and so we get like, oh hey, it travels across the land. You
can see it
thousands
from
of miles. Yeah.
That makes sense. It's astrology. That's right. Cool.
And so we have this point of like, hey, and all this is happening basically at the same time because it would travel across the skies. But yeah, there's also a lot of execution, which is I don't know how far ahead we want to go, but certain battles where things just don't make sense.
Yeah.
And now season 8 is so bad that it retroactively makes like a lot of other things noticeably worse. Like every time I see a show or movie with like really dark cinematography, I'm like, oh, they ran out of budget. Oh, they didn't want to spend the money to make the CGI look good. Oh, they don't want us to, they didn't want to take the time to make this work, so they're just going to not show us everything.
Yeah, the whole long night being too dark to see thing was a really big thing when that episode came out. And it's funny because they asked the creators about it and they're like, well, it's a long night, it's supposed to be dark. And I'm like, the Battle of Helm's Deep took place at night during the rain and we could see everything that was going on. And when you ask Peter Jackson, where does the light come from, his answer was the same place the music comes from. Like, it's a movie, dude. Like, you gotta just, let's see what's happening. How about that?
You want to be realistic?
Yeah, like all of a sudden, there's dragons and ice people. You can have a light.
Or in terms of execution, you have Tyrion, who at this point is a proven military leader who throws away the cavalry. Like,
Tyrion on the show is done so dirty in those later seasons, man. And it's, while all the other actors continue to bring their A game for every scene, even when they're working with really bad scripts, they're still like bringing it. There's the passion for their acting is still there. Peter Dinklage, you could tell, was like, what is this? Why are you making me do this? And then he just like, fine, I'll just phone it in. You're phoning it in, I'll phone it in. And he totally phones in.
I love some of his commentary that
oh my God.
And his commentary are some of the same thoughts that I had, especially I hate to just keep bragging on season 8.
No, let's do it.
All of the battles did not make sense. Like the order of the battles did not make sense to me. Like the big bad should not have been should not have been Cersei. I mean, yes, she's wicked evil, but that should not have been the last, in my opinion. I'm like, why are we doing it this way? Like, the most anticipated battle for me is over, and he's defeated. And so
in an episode too, that should have been a whole season. Like the Dark Knight should, the Long Night should have been an entire season.
And that's the worst part, is that this could have worked. So
yes,
let's break it down from the very start. So we have the Night King coming in, and we could have this moment where like he comes in, and then Tyrion lays a trap where like they go too far, and then the cavalry sweeps them from the side, like what cavalry's supposed to do. But then so they get a victory, and everybody cheering and hurrah, hurrah. And then all of a sudden we could see like, oh no, that was like the Forerunners, and there's a legitimate army behind them, and then they wipe everyone out. And then, like Tania, to your point, then they could somehow survive, and it could be some great thinking on the fly strategy or something like that, or just sheer grit and human reserve and all that other stuff. And then they get to King's Landing afterwards, and it's a broken army that marches. They're exhausted. They're out of resources. Like, then I could see, Cersei not really needing much to stand against them. And so then it could have been one domino falling into the next, and justifying everything along the way. But instead we get like this.
Yeah, I was legitimately hoping that before season 8 came out, I was hoping that the plan was, the Night King and his army come down into the north, Westeros' north, just ransack that, take it over completely. Everybody has to flee south, and they all end up in King's Landing. And of course, you have Cersei there being Cersei during the worst thing ever. And that would have been incredibly compelling to like have to battle the big bad with Cersei being Cersei. That would have been incredibly compelling.
Then you would have gotten the army like squeezed basically, because they're being hit from the back and the front.
I would have wanted them to, when Cersei, because I know Cersei's going to be like, no, I needed Cersei to have to face them as well. I needed that realization for her. I needed her to see it, not just the one thing that was on the chain. No, I needed her to see the army. And what I wanted was them to have the initial battle, but not be successful and have a backup plan. Like, we knew that it might come down this way. I wanted Tyrion to say, as I didn't really trust my sister, so I created this backup plan because I knew she was going to flake. Or for Jaime to show up, hey, she's going to flake. We need a backup plan to get the heck out of here. And so when they realized that they were going to be overwhelmed, boom, they've got the escape plan. They're out of there. And then I needed them to bypass Cersei so that the army's coming for them. And then, like, if you're not going to help, we're going to sit back and we're just going to keep on trucking because we know what's coming.
Even better than my idea.
Yeah, wipe them out.
And like, you deal with it by yourself, Cersei.
Yeah.
Now
if you're so smart, you handle it. Yeah, that would have been
that would have been me. As soon as Jaime showed up with no army, would have been like, we're out. Cersei's not going to dump this all on us.
Yeah.
And then, just be sitting high and mighty. So yeah, I needed Cersei to see the things because she gets away with too much.
Yeah, I want her to eat her words.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Now, to say the one positive thing that I have to say about season 8 after all this, there's one scene that no matter what always gets me. I always tear up. It always hits home, and that's when Brienne gets knighted. I just think they nailed that. They nailed that scene. Like, if there's one thing that they really, really got right, it was that. And it almost makes it worth it to like rewatch because I love that scene.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
As much as we want Cersei to eat her words, we want Brienne to finally be recognized for her efforts.
And they had set it up really well, both in the books and on the show. They had set it up with the whole idea that a knight can make another knight. You don't need a king to do it. Maybe there's never been a female knight before, but Brienne is not your typical, female in this world, and she deserves that recognition. She's a hero. She has saved so many people. She is, she beat the Hound on one-on-one. Like, knight her now.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. And
Good
I
stuff.
feel like as long as that would have happened anywhere, it could have been all of the knights in the woods. They're traveling back. They're exhausted. They're running from the White Walkers. They're on the road and they're like, they're going to catch us. What are we, having their whole, doing all the talk stuff that they were doing. It was really, that was a cool moment. They could have done that on the road with all the knights sitting around a fire. I needed that scene to happen though. So I am very happy about that.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I just had this conversation the past week, but it is, sorry, Natalie.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, because this is going to be a long rant.
Go ahead. Rant away.
There are so many
Here
things
for.
there are so many things that this show created. Like it single-handedly created the HBO streaming service because everyone was just pirating this. And
It's true.
I mean, that is true. HBO realized
true.
how much money they were losing, so they decided to create their own streaming service so that they could try and cash in a little bit, but people were still pirating it and whatever. Anyways, my point is they also created viewing parties because they had the red wedding and the purple wedding and all these things that people who read the books know what's coming, and they were just there recording their friends.
Reaction videos started from Game of Thrones.
It single-handedly, I feel like it ruined it because then you start getting the least common denominators where you have the moment, we are doing spoilers, so full spoilers. Cool.
Yeah.
So where the Night King finally dies, you have the really cool, like she switches the dagger to her other hand and she catches it and all this.
That move was set up before. Yeah.
Right. That move that was set up before. And so you had this cool moment, but it felt hollow and empty. And you have all these videos of people in bars just going absolutely crazy, not realizing that, like, from a story standpoint, that is essentially garbage.
It should have been. It was set up for Jon Snow, and then you switch out the character at the end.
I don't even care if it's Jon Snow, because Jon Snow is kind of a failed hero in that, or failed whatever, chosen one. And so I'm okay with it.
I would have been fine with Samwell Tarly, but we're talking Night's Watch people that were dealing with this, and then Arya just comes in, which I love Arya.
Yeah.
Arya is like my girl.
Even if she like
top 5
used her skills or something, or like was one of the lieutenants in the Night King's army and just like rips off the face and it's, oh no, it's a little girl, and then stabs him, like that would have been cool. And I would have been okay with that. But like you had all these viewing parties of people just cheering, drunk in a bar, going like, yeah, that's the coolest thing ever. And you're like, well, that doesn't actually make sense from anything.
Yeah, it wasn't building up to that. The story didn't demand it. And when you ask the creators why, their answer is, oh, we thought it would be cool. Like there was
common
no
denominator.
Yeah, there was no story-driven element to it. They're just like, oh, it would be cool to subvert expectation, and Jon Snow gets pinned, and then Arya saves the day. And I'm like, dude,
there were hundreds of other people. Brienne, I would have been cool with like Brienne out fighting the Night King.
It's not even necessarily about who deals the final blow. It could have still been Arya, like you said. It's about how this whole just leaping in out of nowhere, and like this, it's supposed to be this very surprising moment.
Oh,
and
she's an assassin. She's not really. I don't think she would win in like an actual fight or whatever or something like that.
Sure, it's just the idea of like we've been building up to this confrontation for 8 seasons, and you wrap the entire thing up in one episode, and then in that one episode, you throw a character in to like save the day that nobody was counting or expecting to do that. It wasn't built up for that. It was just very, very, I don't know. Yeah.
Disappointing.
It would have been so dramatic because at this point we've lost the giant. We've lost a dragon, and just to see them coming, like the people that we love these characters, and now they're on the other side. And I just, man, that felt like a finale, like that they should have worked that to be the finale to me.
It should have been a whole season of the long.
It felt too quick, and it felt like that's it. And I even felt that the first watch through, and that feeling didn't, after knowing how it ended then, because I'm the first time I'm watching, I'm like, that's it. And then having seen it and then rewatching it, I'm getting to that point and I'm like, this still doesn't feel like this should have been here.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt incredibly rushed. We've got friends in the chat that are chatting, and Eva, it felt rushed, and which makes a lot of the things that happened don't make sense. And when we're talking about our heroes and the hero journeys and the Mad King, I don't know all of the behinds of what George R. Martin wanted, but I feel like, and yes, this is all my feelings. I feel like characters like Cersei, get chance after chance after chance, and we get to see her just murdering people and just being the absolute worst and getting chance after chance after chance. Then we have Daenerys, who in a very extremely short period of time, you're going to tell me she loses her best friend and 2 of her dragons, her children, and she's not allowed to be mad? She gets to be murdered? I think, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're giving every other character has assassinated people who were on their side. John did it, and he said, it was the right thing for me to do. And Sam is so upset with Daenerys. Her father or his father and his brother, they made the choice. She gave them a chance. And I know Tyrion was telling her spare them, but honestly, if she'd have spared them, that would have just given everybody else coming down the line. They would not have taken, who's this little girl? She's not going to really do anything.
It's a parallel for Jon Snow having to do his first beheading, and Rob too. Rob before him.
Yes, everyone's allowed to do this except for her.
And here's the thing: Daenerys has very clearly been on a villain arc. I don't understand people who don't see that. It's very clear. It's
because they want her to be on a redemption arc.
They want her to be on they want her to be a hero in the end.
Yeah.
But from her childhood up until now, she has been fighting adversity, fighting to survive, running, and then she became a conqueror. She straight up conquered cities in Yunkai. Like she's been on this villain arc. However, the poor execution on the show comes in where they fumble the lead up in season 8 to that turn from her.
Yes.
Had they built up that turn throughout that entire season, it wouldn't have felt so abrupt when it happened. So again, it's something where, like, when I see it, I go, I recognize this as something that George is probably going to do. I recognize this as something that George told them to do. They messed it up though. They did. They fumbled it. And by doing that, it made it look like it wasn't meant to be that way.
No,
and it was. It just, they just didn't do it right.
Right.
Yeah, I felt like there needed to, like, we didn't get enough of her. If she's going to be the taking over the role of the Mad King, which seems like it's Cersei, because Cersei is getting worse as she loses child after child. She is also spiraling.
Yeah,
but
she's sinking further and further into madness.
It seems like she's on the villain, because you could say the same thing about Cersei in some ways. She was forced to marry Rob and the king. Is it Rob or Robert the king?
Robert.
So she was forced to marry Robert the king. A lot of things were just forced upon her. She didn't have a lot, and she spends all this time trying to get this power that she feels like, I could do this better than these guys, but because I'm a woman, I'm not going to be allowed to. So, but you see her getting chance after chance after chance in her villain journey. Yeah. But you see Daenerys is the one character who's trying time and time again. She's trying to do the right thing. She's the one who's trying to liberate people, and I feel like it just all around it gave a weird vibe to me that you're going to have the one person who's genuinely trying to make this a better place. Some people say, well, so was Thanos, but she's actually doing things. She's freeing people, liberating people, giving them the choice. And there were times where she was like, well, you don't have a choice because you're free now. And they're like, this isn't working for us. And she's like, well, okay, I'm going to let you can't be slaves, but you can work it out so you see her she's trying, and she's not doing well all the time, but you see her trying so hard to get things right. She's actually trying to make this place a better place, and and all of these people just murdering people for the throne that she feels like should have been hers, even though she's a woman, and she's not given a chance. when she makes a mistake. Okay, she
And
did
here's the thing.
on all those people, but she doesn't get a second chance.
You're absolutely right. And the thing with Daenerys that really bugs me is that despite the villain arc being present in both the show and the books,
Less
in
on
the
the show,
books, sure. Well, here's the thing. On the show, she's cold and stoic and very like ice queeny, while in the books, she can be very warm, very playful. She's very kind.
In the show, they have the entire Holy Mother story arc. Like, she is raised up like a god.
Yes, but that, she's being raised up that way because she was a liberator, not because she's kind. You know what I mean? Like, she always had that very, very stern thing about her on the show, very, very, like, very poised, very serious. And even when she's trying to do good, she was doing it with an iron fist. Mm-hmm. And I get that that's the way that the creators were interpreting her villain arc, but it's more of a villain arc in the books when you see all the good qualities in her, and they'll slowly deteriorate over time until she gets to that madness part of it. You know what I mean? Like, if you build it that way, it would be more obvious. But this very like cold stoic thing that she has going on the show, it's just very jarring because, as you say, Nia, she's trying to do good, and I recognize that she's trying to do good, but I'm not seeing it in her. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not here. It's in the actions, but it's not here.
Even if she went like a calculating route, like I do X number of good and that will offset, this person I have to kill, and then this, then the other. Like, she liberated slavers. Like, she is doing everything that a hero does, and it all goes badly. And yeah, sure, but we don't actually see her like reacting badly to it or deciding like maybe I should become, a dictator and tell them what to do. Instead, they come to her and they're like, how do we better our lives? Like, how do we fix the problems in the city? It's not. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, sure, she abandons them, but the arc isn't there. There's the Cliff Notes version of the arc. I'm going to just keep using that term. Like,
it's true.
It hits the story beats, but without the substance behind it of saying like, hey,
exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
You see her. It's literally like she's literally sacrificing everything, her army, her dragons, her friends, to help these people, only for to turn around and make one mistake and get killed. It's like it's odd. You know what I mean? I needed to see her doing more actual bad things that other people haven't done, because the killing of Sam's father and brother was not it, because everybody else did that.
Wasn't enough,
I mean, Cersei blew up a sept.
A whole and a big chunk of her own kingdom. I'm just like, that's fine.
Makes sense.
And the other thing is, with Cersei being pregnant, when she lobs off,
pregnant.
Yeah.
Just because she touches her belly doesn't mean she's actually pregnant.
Because her actions don't support that. Because Tyrion gives this speech that Tyrion's like, this woman loves her children more than anyone else, including herself. If anything, she will do it for the child. And he's looking at her like, don't do this. Think of your child. Think of your future. Because he knows if she does this, that's it for Daenerys. Because Daenerys has sacrificed everything else. Her armies are dwindled to like minimal numbers at this point. That is her best friend and confidant, who's been with her from the beginning of this journey that she's been on. She's lost her 2 dragons. No. And Tyrion is telling her, and Cersei is just like, do it. And I'm like,
Tyrion got nerfed in those.
Yeah,
in those
I'm like,
last seasons.
This doesn't make sense.
Let me tell you something. After all of the buildup of like the animosity between Tyrion and Cersei, and after the hatred that he feels for her, despite her one redeeming quality, as he stated both in the books and on the show, like, yeah, you love your kids. It's your one redeeming quality. Okay, great. She's still a monster that has put you through a lot of crap, dude. And I just don't feel like Tyrion would forgive that and forget it. And when it comes down to like, helping as the hand of the queen, helping the queen that you have rallied behind versus Cersei, Tyrion is not choosing Cersei. That's just not happening. I don't see that happening in the books at all. Yeah, same with Jamie. Jamie's not picking her either. Jamie leaves her in the books like this bitch is crazy, and he's out.
Yes.
So
Except
yeah,
apparently he might come back.
he's not coming back. Not in the books. That's a show
We
thing.
don't.
That's
We
a
don't
show
know.
thing. I guarantee you, it's a show thing. There's no way that George is doing that. Now, I'm not saying he ends up with Brienne or anything like that. I'm just saying that like his redemption arc is very clear, and it does not lead back to Cersei. I don't see that happening, especially once all their kids are dead. Like, what the hell is even the point? Like he's moved beyond Cersei. And here's the thing: the whole thing with him losing his hand on the show is, in my opinion, kind of fumbled, especially in seasons 5 and forward, because they start doing this thing where it becomes like his secret weapon. Every time he's in a conflict, that golden hand saves him, and I'm like, that's not the point of that hand. Him losing that hand means he is no longer a fighter, period, and now he has to be smart. He has to become the new Tyrion in some ways.
Yeah,
You know what I
'cause he
mean? He
wasn't
has to
smart.
learn from that brother, because he wasn't smart before. He was a badass fighter. And now that he's not anymore, he needs to evolve in order to survive. Just like all the rest of the characters. Sansa had to evolve in order to survive in this world. That's what he needed to do, and he didn't. On the show, he was still fighting fights. He was still doing sword fights with his left hand, and he was catching blades with his golden hand. And I'm like, this is like, it's comical. It's silly. Whereas he shouldn't be in the fight at all. He should be a general. He should be up on calling out the shots. He shouldn't be down fighting with everybody else. It doesn't make any sense.
When they
So
go to Doran, you said comical, and it makes me laugh. But I'm like, am I supposed to be
yeah,
laughing at this?
it's
And he
yeah,
thinks he's goner, and he puts up his hand, and the sword goes chunk.
oh my god. I rolled my eyes so hard they almost fell out of my head when that happened.
I'm like, well, that's convenient.
No, it's the worst.
I will make a comment. I think he could go back, because we're talking episode 1, pushing a kid out of the window.
The things I do for love.
I
Yeah,
do
sure.
for love.
The reason I don't think he'll go back is because she doesn't love him anymore, and he realizes that when he comes back without his hand, she
That's right,
is
she never-
very cold towards him, immediately dismissive of him, because he's no longer useful to her. She never loved him. He was useful.
Okay,
and
so
now that he sees that, he's
he
not going
still
back.
loves her, but he is finding self-worth,
Exactly.
pretty much. And
Yeah. There's no going back, especially when he has the juxtaposition between her and Brienne. Again, I'm not saying he ends up with Brienne. I'm saying that Brienne treats him right, whereas Cersei never did. And now that he has somebody actually treating him right, he can now see how she wasn't. He was blind to it before, but now it's all.
I would actually
clicking for him.
prefer Hell not to end up with Brienne in this
Yeah, I don't
series,
need that. That doesn't need to
because
happen.
to me, it's
He needs to knight her,
it
though.
would put more strength into him knighting her.
Yeah.
If they don't have that. Now, I know that Brienne has this love towards him, but that can easily become a love of a
Kinship.
mentor. Yes, a kinship. Like
Yeah.
that, we could easily evolve that love.
So instead of Arya's journey to the high seas, it could be Brienne and Jamie going off on adventures.
Sure.
Into the
They could
sunset.
sail off into the sunset together.
Yep.
Sure, absolutely. Hand in hand.
Too soon.
Too soon.
No, that would be a good use of the golden hand.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Instead of
Sure.
it saved him.
That's so ridiculous.
One character that I can say, for the most part, I enjoyed all the way through, even though I'm not sure if I like all of the changes that they made throughout the book. With Theon became one of my favorite characters. I mean, I hated this little weasel
Same.
in the beginning.
Yeah,
Just
she's-
his storyline with his sister, especially, when he jumped off the boat and he leaves her, I'm just like, I wanted to cry. I'm like, no, Theon. But understanding that had he stayed, he'd have probably then
He would have died.
Yeah, they would have both probably just been killed. So that kept her alive and gave him another chance to redeem it. Oh my gosh. So when yeah. I just loved all that. When he shows up for her and then she hits him.
Yeah, Theon is good stuff.
Yeah.
Theon
and he really went through a lot. They made Ramsay like really awful.
Well, they needed a new
they need a new Joffrey. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
New Joffrey.
They did it. And worse. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So
and
the sausage scene was hilarious.
Initially such a friendly face too. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
What a
yeah. I loved Ramsay's introduction early on in the series and the way that he like befriended Theon and then showed his true colors and then the torture that went on for Theon until the point where Theon becomes Reek. That scene where he has Reek shaving him in front of his father, brilliant. Like so well done. Now the stuff where they paired him up with Sansa, awful, ridiculous, should not have happened. And especially because in the books, that storyline happens to a different character. Her name is Jane Poole. And he marries her because she's standing in for Arya. She's pretending to be Arya Stark. And so he marries her to secure the North. And that whole storyline with the sexual assault and everything happens to her. And the thing is, they go, oh, let's give it to Sansa on the show because this Jane Poole character doesn't exist. But then the only part of that storyline that they give her is the sexual assault and nothing else. The Northern Conspiracy is gone. The pink letter, all that stuff is gone. And what you're left with is just horrible scenes of Ramsay being Ramsay. That leads nowhere.
It was too much. Like, we already got it. We got it. Ramsay's the baddest dude on the block. We got it. We didn't
and that's the thing.
That is an understatement.
Yes. And that's the thing is that after George left, because he only wrote one episode per season, but he was in the writer's room with them. And so he was guiding them. And once their safety net was gone, very quickly, immediately after his departure in season 5, you can see how the deterioration of the storytelling begins because they just aren't as good as storytellers as he is.
They forgot that the Lannisters were blonde.
Oh my god!
No, that's just dirt.
Oh,
he's been
dirt. It's dirty hair. Sure, his hair's dirt. Get out of here.
I'm like, blonde rare. And it's all of the strategists and everybody who's supposed to be these great war guys and all of the things that they've seen with the Dead Rising, you're going to hide the women and children in the crypt. And the first time I'm watching this, I'm like, the crypt with the dead people? That was my thought. I'm like, how's this going to work?
Yeah.
Trying to save steps from moving dead bodies. I mean,
they just were not thinking this stuff through, man. They really weren't. They were going by what's cool. Oh, let's put them in the crypts because it's creepy down there. Like that's all they were. That's the extent of the writing, like thought process. There is like,
that's one of the things that I would have had changed is that those people would not have been in the crypt. They would have already had a little mini army surrounding them with plan B to get out. So the main army that was going to try and fight and squash the White Walkers would be like, okay, plan B, we're following them and they'll always be ahead of us so that if the White Walkers do catch up with us, we can still fight them off. That I don't know. I wasn't in the writer's room and maybe my idea sucks as bad as everybody else's ideas. We all have ideas of how we would have done it better. That would have been mine. Never. I can't imagine me, just a fantasy writer, knowing not to put people in the crypt. How in the world are all these people, after everything that they just saw, let's put the women and children in the crypt? How they wouldn't do it. I don't care. Shock value. Ooh, cool to see the zombies rising. No, that's not cool because it makes them all look dumb. Like they've never fought a battle.
Season 7 and 8 was all about character assassination and plot armor.
so much.
You're mute.
Yeah, you're
Thank
muted.
you. I was agreeing with you that's exactly what it comes down to. Is sorry about the sirens.
Okay.
Character assassination and plot armor. That is exactly what season 7 and 8 are all about. And the other big frustrating part for me with these later seasons, although there are signs towards it in the earlier seasons, but just the male chauvinist attitude of the writers, this very anti-female thing that they had going on that really comes through in those later seasons. I mean, for example, making Yara, whose name is Asha in the books, making her a lesbian just because she's a tough character, whereas she's straight in the books and has the most incredible and most important sex scene in the entire series, and possibly my favorite sex scene ever written. And they completely changed her character because, oh, she's a tough chick and tough chicks are lesbians. Like, what are you talking about? And
Wait, was that in book 5?
Yes, it's in book 5.
Okay, definitely reading it now.
Yeah. if I can tease it a little bit for you, the reason that it's one of my favorites is because it reveals her character so well. She, in this chapter, is on the deck of the ship. She's running the show. She's the captain, and a female captain is a big freaking deal for the Ironborn. So she has to be this freaking rock hard, like, don't fuck with me kind of person. And she goes through, the motions of leading her boat, and every captain is the king of their ship, is the way the Ironborn think of it. But when she goes back to her cabin, there's this crazy moment where she is attacked, and you think, holy crap, somebody is attacking her. They're trying to sexually assault her. And very quickly you realize, oh no, this is foreplay. These two are together. And by the end of it, you realize she can only be vulnerable with her partner. And she cannot show this vulnerability at all to anyone else because she'll lose credibility as the captain. So
and I feel like we're getting tidbits of that in book 4, because I'm noticing this her storyline in book 4.
Yes.
And I didn't know where that was going to go, but
it's a wonderful character revealing moment that's their kink, because she is only submissive to him and literally no one else, and no one knows it. No one can know it. It's a secret for them, and it's what makes them strong together. And it's just beautifully written. That's awesome. That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're not going to get that now, or that we didn't get that in the show.
And there's plenty that I can point to with Sansa's character. There are sexual assault scenes for Sansa that don't happen in the books. Not just the Ramsay thing, but earlier in the series it happens. They traumatize the actress with those scenes. She has spoken out that she's had to go to therapy for dealing with these imaginary sexual assault moments because they were that visceral and that scary for her. She was a child and they were doing that to her. There's plenty that I can say about Daenerys. There's a very horrible story about season 1 where I
heard the story too.
Emilia Clarke. In any other production, first of all, if there is a nude and or sex scene, the staff is minimal. They go down to just the director, the cameraman, and the actors on screen, and everybody else F off, because this is it's a delicate moment. Not so on the Game of Thrones set. She was in front of everybody all the time, and they wouldn't even have like a robe waiting by for her after her scenes. Jason Momoa had to raise hell to get her a freaking robe.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
new.
And he was new.
Have the pole.
Yeah, but he's also called Drogo. He's like, hey, motherfucker. So anyway.
Do I need to say it in Dothraki?
Yeah, exactly. Do I need to roll my R's right now? What do I need to do to get her a robe? So yeah, man, like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that with Brienne and Arya too, where they have them bad mouthing females in general, which is not something that happens in the books. Just because they're tough chicks doesn't mean that they're against femininity in any way. Brienne is a very feminine character. She's supposed to be the warrior version of Sansa. That's what Brienne is. Yeah. Brienne is a lady who just happens to kick a lot of ass. So I don't know, man. Like there's a lot of problematic stuff with all of that, and it just gets worse and worse in the later seasons, especially once George leaves.
And then the Starbucks cup, and I mean, they just got
just a
That's-
little
all
thing.
around.
Yeah.
The sword that
that's
Ben,
funny, though.
Jon
That's
Snow's sword
a
that
mistake.
Ben,
That was
he,
a sign
gets
that
up on the horse.
they were tired and just trying to get through it at this point.
Yeah.
They needed that coffee.
And what's worse about that, Nia, is that they left to do Star Wars and then dropped the ball with Star Wars, and they haven't.
Well, yeah, they
I know the
got
actors were
kicked
bored
off
with
of
the
that.
show.
They got kicked off of that because they dropped the ball on this. You know, they were like, oh, let's rush to finish Game of Thrones so we can get Star Wars, and then they fumble the ending of Game of Thrones, and Disney's
don't
like,
necessarily
never
fault them on
mind
that
Star
either.
Wars.
Because the all the actors, they've been doing this their entire most of them, this is their start and end of their acting careers, so this is like all of it. And so I could see after 10 years they would get bored, or you want to try something else, or this, that, and the other. So I can understand wanting to rush to the final season, but then you make every episode count. Like you give your all.
Or there's always the option to, hey, let's stick with the original plan, 10 seasons, 10 episodes each. We want out. So here is the structure for the next few seasons. These writers in our writers' room that have been with us since season one of you or two of you can step up, take our place, and finish the show. There's nothing wrong with that either, man. If they've been there from the start, they know where it's going. You give them the roadmap. Peace out, bye. I'm gonna go do Star Wars. Everybody would have been happy, man. Like nobody would have noticed. It would have been fine. 10 seasons, we could have had a whole season 9 full of just the long night. It would have been fantastic. And you know, they were being greedy about it. They didn't want to let it go to anybody else, but they also wanted to be done with it. There's so much to say about the Double Ds. They are they're a problem.
Yeah,
they're a problem.
very much so. Let's go with, you had some thoughts on the original plan, and then what's going on.
Well, we have talked about it a little bit. I've laid it out, at least the original idea for the book series, starting out as a trilogy, evolving into 5, evolving into 7. That alone is I mean, look at how Ben feels about books 4 and 5. That's could have probably been avoided had George Martin done this differently, or maybe stuck to his original plan. The same is the case for the show, unfortunately. Their original plan was 10 seasons, 10 episodes each. You get to season 7 and they're like, we're going to shorten this one, and we're going to shorten the next one, and then we're going to be done. And it's like, you didn't build up to this. You didn't set us up for this. This is not what the roadmap has been. It's like you have been taking a step by step by step by step, and then all of a sudden you're going to be like, finish line, and it's like you skipped a whole bunch of steps to get there. We're not ready for the finish line. Like, you needed to get us there a little closer. So that's really what I'm referring to when I talk about the original plan for the book and the original plan for the series. Had both George Martin and the showrunners stuck to their original plans, both series could be very, very different and maybe even more successful than they were. The thing about changing up the game plan for Game of Thrones so late is this incredible fall from grace. When people talk about Game of Thrones now, they talk about how it was one of the greatest shows on television in television history, the biggest cultural phenomenon in a long time. And then they talk about how it was just a horrible ending. And, like, Lost is a show that a lot of people have problems with the ending. I'm one who loves the ending, who loves the entire series. And I rewatch that series religiously. I'm pretty much always in some place of a rewatch of Lost. And there are lots of people who are exactly like me. We don't all feel like it falls in the end. Pretty much everybody feels that Game of Thrones falls towards the end. It's like it is known.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though I wasn't happy with all of it, I just think Lost lost its way a little bit, and then they were trying to.
I'll fight you. I will.
It felt like they were trying to figure it out.
This is not a Lost show, but I'll say this: the best way to watch Lost. There's a good way to watch Lost, and it is this: you watch an episode, and then you have a conversation with Adrian. That is the recipe for the best Lost viewing experience. every time you watch an episode, give me a call and we'll talk
I
about
will
it.
say that the last season did have some of the most heartfelt, beautiful moments that I have seen.
The last season is a masterpiece.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
A masterpiece.
But I did find
Anytime,
myself
what's his
in that.
face
It was
with the
all a
girl
dream.
who was pregnant? Like I forget the guy's name, but him and the girl that was pregnant, and he loved her and stuff.
Charlie and Claire.
Yeah,
Oh,
Charlie and Claire.
Yeah.
I love them.
Oh,
I love them so much.
I named my oldest Charlie. Half of the reason is because of the character on that show and the fact that he has such a strong redemption. You know, he's very problematic for a while, and then he has the strongest redemption on the show. And it's just a very strong reminder that anybody can come back, anybody can better themselves and become a better person and make up for their mistakes. And so that's one of the reasons that my kid's name is Charlie.
Yeah, I wanted to get a horse
love that
and
show.
name him Smoke Monster. I love
The Man in Black. The Smoke
Yep.
Monster.
So, but yeah, it's just sometimes things get a little convoluted, but if you can bring it back in. But I feel like with some of the things that you were saying about the things, how the misogyny that was going on, I feel like that's one of the reasons why, like, I feel like, could I have accepted this is the ending for Daenerys? And I feel like, yes, if I'd have got a season of her acting like Cersei, absolutely.
Yeah,
Then
if
when
there was an
Cersei
entire
got at the end,
season.
Daenerys got it at the end, but you're gonna give that to Daenerys
Basically, like, one episode.
after she loses everything.
Not even one episode,
there's-
a moment. Like it happens in a moment, in a scene. And I'm like, you can't
when
do
she's-
that.
all you got is her on the back of the dragon and
just
looking
brooding
away
and,
and then looking back at, and then like having that, like you said, brooding face and just going, yeah, burn it all. And I'm like,
yeah.
what the- no. I
That's
mean,
not what Daenerys would
I
do.
could even settle for 2 episodes where we like are going back and forth to other storylines, but every time we go back to Daenerys, she's doing something just a little bit worse. And so that slow progression, and there was a show on Netflix called Push, if I remember correctly, but it was how susceptible people are to doing something illegal, and they search for people. I mean, did the whole test of where in a waiting room, when people hear a beep, they stand up. But the thing is, one person in there doesn't know that's what you're supposed to do. They just see everyone else do it. And then the question is, are they going to do it because everyone else is doing it, or are they going to not? And in the show, after they selected these people who are susceptible to influence, they started with, hey, help me signify these little hors d'oeuvres as vegan because they haven't come in yet. And we're supposed to have vegan stuff, and these definitely have meat. Like, and will they do that? And then it ends up with, would you push somebody off a building? This slow build up to that, and the psychology of it. I need that with villain arcs as well. Of like,
there has to be a series of choices that lead to that big moment. To
it's
that,
always,
and they need to be different choices from the ones everybody else who gets to be a hero.
Yes, because and I think that's what we were missing with Daenerys. Like, Cersei kept on saying, "It's my children," and so every time she lost a child, you could see this evolution. Whereas Daenerys losing, I didn't see the love.
They didn't spend the time. They didn't spend the time on.
Yeah, they didn't build the bond. So her losing dragons wasn't as strong.
It could have been.
It could have been.
I feel like I knew that it was, but yeah, even when she had the dragons locked up, like, I wanted to see more of her being upset that they're locked up. Not okay. Drago, is it Drogo? Her dragon. Drogon.
Like Dragon Drogon.
You know, when he comes back, I wanted to see, especially because now we've seen the other one, not Fire and Ice, the other series where we get to see the training with the dragons.
Yeah.
Fire and Blood.
House of Dragons.
House of the Dragons. Now that we've seen that and how it was, I would have loved to see something like that. I would have loved to have seen that, so that when they're showing up and you see the dragons with her, like she has had a stern talking to with her dragons, whatever it needed to be. That
they needed more personality in the dragons.
Show a connection, show a bond. Like, instead they show an folding of the dragons where it was distancing herself, like almost like I felt there was a closer connection to the direwolves, because even when the direwolves did something wrong, the human stood up for their wolf and everything. There was
Except
a reason.
for Sansa.
Whereas the dragon, when the dragon was killing the sheep and then killed the little girl, it was more of a shock for Daenerys and stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of her going,
you're letting them run wild.
Yeah, like
freaking dragon.
They made them more wild and stuff than instead of this connection. And I think it would have been stronger if she lost her dragons, and that kind of was her downfall. But we saw her without the dragons becoming strong, get the dragons, get strong, and just that I feel like that's where it was, because Cersei we kind of understood her going into madness. There's nothing that Daenerys has. She started with nothing, didn't have the throne. Like she was beaten down by her brother and stuff like that. So there wasn't a growth there to lose. She didn't.
And at times she also felt afraid of her dragons. Like I can understand maybe
not knowing how to control them. She was afraid of them. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you want to make a comparison as the dragons are her children, perfectly fine. Then have her treat them like children instead of treating them like disobedient animals.
Yeah, she should have been disciplining them. She should have been teaching them. Absolutely. We get one scene of her teaching them Dracarys in season 2, and that's it. Like, there's no more like further growth between that.
And
I mean,
they always felt like tools too. They're tools to get places. They're tools to kill people, but they never felt like.
Had they put the work into her relationship with the dragons and her building them up, it would have made Jon Snow's connection to one of them much more important. And it would have made that scene where they connect so much more powerful, because then you would have been like, wait a minute, this is not supposed to happen. But because they were treated as just animals, mounts, they were treated as mounts. And so, like, of course, just freaking mount them.
And then that could have strengthened her connection with Jon Snow.
Absolutely.
I saw it as like a convenience, like close quarters, like, you're here situation. But by her having this strong connection with her dragons, and then she was cold to Jon Snow at first, and then seeing his connection to the dragons, much like if my children, like, I have so much joy when my children are connecting with their father, like, and my husband, by the way, we're still together. But with that joy of like that connection, something I love is connecting with someone else. Like, it's that would strengthen the bond as well.
And I feel like it would have helped so much with the reveal, the Jon Snow reveal to Daenerys. And I feel like it would have made more sense to her, like, bring it all full circle. And then at the end, I don't know if she needed to die. I feel like it should have been a death for them. Jon also got to be resurrected. So maybe I don't like the ending, so it's hard for me to even fix the part where he's the one that kills her. But maybe Dragon takes her back and she's revitalized by fire, but now she's learned her lesson. I'm sorry, everybody else got to learn a lesson or got multiple chances, and she just it was just quick.
Now, on the topic of Jon and Daenerys, both Jon and Daenerys in the books, and very much so in the show, both of them fulfill Azor Ahai-like prophecies. Both of them are a contender for that spot.
And
Tyrion is possibly the other head of the dragon, but he doesn't have as much Azor Ahai stuff going on, like as far as prophecy stuff. They definitely do, Jon and Daenerys. And the idea that that maybe this whole Azor Ahai thing is not a chosen one, but rather
a chosen them.
I've chosen them, so to speak. Yeah, like there should be at least 3 players that come together to make that happen. That gets thrown out the window. Jon's lineage doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't do anything.
Except annoy
Daenerys. Yeah, it annoys her a bit. That's all it does. And I'm like, this is like the great mystery of the show. was his lineage, who was his mother, who was Jon Snow's mother. This is the thing that landed the creators the show. After talking with George for a couple hours, he asked them who is Jon Snow's mother, and when they had the right answer, he was like, "Okay, you can go ahead and do the show because it's that important." And in the end, they do nothing with it.
And
so,
to me, the other thing I'll say before we get into best and worst changes, because we're gonna get short on time. I was afraid this was gonna happen, but
I think we've done most of that anyway. But
yeah, you guys figured it out. We'll just go with our favorite and least favorite. But to me, in this world, and I don't know how it all works out with the whole universe of it all and the magical system. But to me, the fact that there were 3 dragons, that seemed special to me. Like they're the last 3. And the fact that they were picked off, I felt almost too easily. Like, I don't know. So there's only 1 dragon left. So I don't know if there are eggs somewhere from these 3 dragons. I don't know. But it just seemed like that should have been a bigger deal, that there are only 3 dragons left in the world, and Daenerys brought them back. She's the one that and to just have them all die, or all but 1 die in the last season, something about none of that set well with me. So it just, I don't know what I needed for losing the 2 dragons to be okay, but it just didn't work for me.
So that's the
I
thing.
feel like it should be more important.
The first dragon's death was monumental. We felt the pain, and it showed how powerful the Night King is.
And it gave him like the linchpin that he needed to get past the wall. Like it fit into the story. It made sense. And it was Viserion. Like, who gives a fuck about Viserion?
Poor Viserion.
It was named after Viserys. We don't like that one. He can die. That's fine.
But then the second dragon. Okay, so you are in. I think I said this last time. No, you are in ancient times. And so the one thing in battle that will be groundbreaking is
a dragon.
Well, altitude. So you can see the entire layout. You know, you can see the land. You can see where the armies are. And to have a dragon be snuck up on by somebody
by a fleet of ships. Like, how does a fleet of ships sneak up on a dragon? That doesn't make
sense. Because of a couple of rocks. They were hidden by a few rocks. No, if that dragon's up there, they're going to see something's going on from their vantage point.
If they could see the dragon to aim at him, the dragon can
see them. The dragon's got a much better vantage point. And I just don't think that after losing the first dragon, which was, it's again, when we see them coming in, they've got the giant, they've got the dragon, and it's just like, no, they've got our guys on their side. That's pretty amazing. So I could accept that, the loss of the 1, but I don't think she's going to be so cavalier with her last 2 dragons. But again, maybe that's the falling apart of the whole bonding with the dragon. It just, the whole thing with the dragon stuff.
They could have. I don't. By the pain of the first one, they could have gotten her to do like a rubber band snap where she got really close and really protective of the other 2. Then that would have made some more power to the second one. And that could be part of her downward spiral. I think it's hilarious that we've all come to give her connection to the dragons, and then that kind of explains a spiral when she loses them.
It would mirror Cersei, 3 children dying off one by one. You could make that work. But yeah, you're right. They didn't, and it's the same thing with the direwolves. They just did not have as close a connection on the show as they do in the books. Same thing with the dragons. They just don't have the same connection. I feel like if we start picking off the dragons in the books, it's going to be much harder hitting, because they still, in book 5, they're still her children. She still thinks of them as her children. It would have worked.
Well, we also get more internal thoughts and stuff, which is how be fleshed out better in the story book version. And thus understand why someone would be like, this is my goal, and the people who get in my way are going to die. Like that villain arc and everything. Because we can't be just bad for the sake of being bad. It's like they have a goal and an idea for the world.
Yeah.
All right. Do anybody want to give their favorite or least favorite change from book to show? I'll give mine really quick.
Mhm.
One of my, it's mentioned before, but Dorn, Sand Snakes, all of that. I think that they
Worse.
dropped the ball worst. And the treatment of the dragons. I mean, I don't know how it's going to end for them, but just what I've seen, I needed more. I wanted the connection. I didn't like it.
It's really hard for me to pick a worse change because so many of them are just so awful. Sansa pairing up with Ramsay, awful. Dorne and the Sand Snakes in particular, awful. I could probably go on and on with worse changes. As far as best change, though, I like, especially in the earlier seasons, what they did with Shay. They made her a more compelling character on the show than she ever was in the books, and it made her betrayal of Tyrion that much harder hitting. So well done. Another worst change was, and I'm sorry, I know that you liked it. No, you liked it. But the House of Black and White, I feel like they kind of dropped the ball with that a little bit too. They were spinning their wheels a little bit with that one. I would have actually liked to have skipped it altogether and kept it a little bit more mysterious and seen her come out of the House of Black and White a very changed
My heart.
character. I know, I'm sorry, but but yeah, man. When they change a character for the better, Bronn, Shay, these are characters that were improved on the show rather than made worse. So I gotta hand it to them for that. But again, those were the earlier seasons when George was still there. So I don't know.
And the same thing with the worst changes. We've gone on. Take your pick of anything.
A lot of bad changes.
Yeah. My best change, I don't think that when George R.R. Martin gets to the battle in Winterfell, that he will have so many characters who have been so built up, having those individual moments that we have waited seasons for. Like,
good point.
Robert's illegitimate kid. Like, just seeing him have fun with Arya, or I mean, not like the intimate moment. I could have gone without that moment. But I meant like just seeing them get together, because here are two children of very important people who have been publicly murdered, and they have a lot in common, and
they have a connection. They have a bond.
Exactly. And I don't need to see any more of that details, but just seeing how they get to interact, or seeing Brienne interact with all these other people, and you have some of the funniest scenes with the people behind the wall finding this giant Brienne woman and being
Tormund Giantsbane. Oh
Tormund.
my god,
yeah, exactly.
Tormund
Love it.
Maybe my favorite character on the show is
So
Tormund.
great.
After he sees Brienne for the first time, I'm like, this is the greatest character ever written.
The scene between him and the Hound, and and in the show, I'll edit the language when the Hound goes, Brienne of Tarv.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you have met her.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't think George R.R. Martin will ever have all those characters
probably not
come together like that, because a lot of those characters may not necessarily exist, or may not exist in those forms. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is probably one of the best changes within the show, is they actually gave a moment of wish fulfillment that felt earned.
Yeah.
As opposed to
the
something that's just
Avengers
cool.
Assemble moment, everybody coming together to fight the fight. Yeah, I get that. That's cool.
And it felt so much fun to be back in Winterfell.
It did. It did. Do you have any favorites or least favorites that you wanted to mention?
Favorite across the board that so many times when I'm watching it, I'm thinking it. Thank God they aged up the kids. Oh my God.
Yes. Damn, why didn't I say that one?
Number one,
yes.
Thank you.
Number one with a bullet. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Daenerys in particular. Daenerys too got aged up. And
even some of those are still kind of borderline, but they are.
Yeah, Sansa was still borderline.
Yeah.
Especially when she married Tyrion. Yeah. I like the change of her wedding night with Tyrion. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then I will even throw in, I kind of enjoyed that they, in the book, Martin, he was not kind in the description of people whatsoever. And I'm kind of glad they steered away from that. you know, like
a lot of uggos in the books.
yeah, like just or even the gruesomeness. Like Tyrion, he ends
Has
up with
his
a
note.
scar.
Oh yeah,
They ripped his whole nose off.
Yeah, but
you
he
got a
ends up with
handsome guy like Peter Dinklage. Like you're not gonna
Like,
mess
what
up
are you
his
gonna
face,
do? You
right?
can't mess it up too bad. Let's give him a scar that we kind of end up liking it anyway.
Yeah,
We're like,
yeah.
not bad.
It made him more handsome.
Yeah.
And they did pretty good with the CGI. I'm glad they did that. Their world building was good. The worst change, I think it's pretty much when Martin wasn't in the room anymore. That's when it happened. Like when we moved away from an internal conflict. It's like they forgot the internal conflict and thought it could just be assumed and went with only external conflicts. And I'm like, no, there's always an internal one too. There's always multiple conflicts going on. So,
okay. So since we are getting close to the end here, I feel like I should ask because JC Carpenter just threw out her favorite line, which is one from Ygritte, and it made me realize that we didn't really talk about Ygritte at all. So let's do this top 3 favorite characters throughout the series. Each of you? Who wants to go first?
Well, go ahead. Start us off.
I guess I'll go first. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, and I'm talking about the book series here. Brand chapters are some of my favorite to read. Not that he's one of my favorite characters, but those chapters are just really, really great. Ygritte is one of my favorite characters. I feel like she's just so compelling. Every time she speaks, like I'm paying attention. You know what I mean? Like there's just something about the way that she puts words together that just makes me happy. And then Arya, probably. Arya is probably my top favorite character. What about you guys?
I can only think of 2. I'll say Brienne, number 1. I know you didn't like all of her chapters and you know that she's going off and searching for the wrong Sansa sister, but I felt so compelled by her struggle, by the way she moves through the world, and by her just sheer strength that it was always impressive. And she shows such fortitude in the way she sees the world. And then obviously also Tyrion, because he is one of the best tacticians across the series. He's not as conniving as his sister. He's not as charismatic as his father, but he knows what's going on. He knows what needs to get done, and he knows how to get it done.
He has like the best parts of all 3 of them. Jaime, Tywin, and Cersei. Like if you take the best things about each of them, that's Tyrion. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next.
See.
okay. And luckily, I was one of the last ones, so I had time to think about this. But Arya, I like her growth and such. I like Tyrion. Yes, honey. You want to be on my live stream? You're on my live stream right now.
He's so stinking cute.
I'm glad he didn't hear that. I'll go to his head. Right. So Arya, Tyrion, and then with the last one, I thought about this, and I think it's going to be Marjorie's grandmother, just because I feel like
Olenna.
She was the smartest. Like she knew the game, she seen the things, she played the game, and she took like her L at the end. She was like, nah, I play.
Not even it doesn't even count as an L. Like
not even L. Like she's
losing.
She held her own in a room alone with Tywin freaking Lannister. No other character on the show can claim that. That is strictly Olenna's crown right there. Is Tywin tried to take me on, and even he couldn't handle me. Yeah, Olenna's the best.
And the actress was flawless.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, but I think those were my top 3. Like just these very intellectual growth, like it, and actually a little bit. I think they're covered the 3 different realms. There's the growth of Arya, the evolution of Tyrion, different than growth because Tyrion was like finding his own, whereas Arya was just learning, a sponge, and then the established learner. And I.
Okay, I'm gonna try. I'm in agreement, I think, with all of you on the characters. So I'm going to throw out a couple more. Of course, Tyrion, probably my favorite. But I'm going to throw in, as a pair, I liked Asha and Theon. That sibling. I love the relationship from beginning to end. And watching her.
Even when he was hitting on her?
I know.
He did put his hand in her
That part was gross.
Yeah.
That part was gross. After that, when she's talking, that was gross. But when she's talking about how when he was crying, he would always cry as a baby, and she's the only one that could get him to stop crying. From that point on, forget the intro. I didn't know who she was then. We didn't know her then.
Tyrion. I mean,
we didn't know her then. I was like, Tyrion, you're who?
In the show,
Theon didn't know it either,
I had my assumptions in the show, but they kind of did pretty well, making me think.
Yeah.
So I like the progression of that relationship. How she never gave up on him, even when she wanted to give up on him, she did not give. You could tell she didn't really give up on him. She was just hurt, disappointed, and just you could see like it broke her heart. You know, just to see his spiral, his downfall. To go to rescue him. So that relationship after he knew who she was, the relationship after he knew who she was.
That was the brother and sister that we wanted from Cersei and Jaime.
Yes.
Yeah. And the heartbreaking moment when she goes to rescue him from Ramsay and he won't go. Like he's too scared to even leave like the dog kennels. Oh my God.
He's not Theon in that moment. He's
Reek.
Oh
my name is Reek.
Bravo to the actor to be able to play essentially two different characters. Like that actor, perfect.
And then arguably three, because the Theon that like returns post Reek is not the same Theon anymore. He's so arguably three.
And I'll give it to the writers too on that a little bit. That having that evolution.
Yeah, the Theon that jumps into the water.
I've got a cutie too. You're not the only one with a cutie. I got a cutie too.
Yeah,
about to have a cutie off.
Yeah. There they are, the guys. Yeah, the Theon that jumps into the water and you're afraid that he's Reek again, but you realize he's not Reek again. He's going to find a way to save his sister. You know, standing up in that moment's not going to save her. Jumping in the water is going to save her in the long run. He'll have another chance. That's a different Theon. It's not Reek. It's not the OG Theon. So them as a dynamic brother and sister duo after he knows who she is. I love them. And my other is Dragon. When he won my heart when he tries to move Dany and Dany won't move. Oh my gosh. And the way that he could have singed Jon to dust. And he doesn't. He turns that anger on the throne. I'm like, you win. I love you, Dragon. And I believe somehow he took her back and put her in the fire and saved her. I don't know how. That's just the fanfic in my head.
That's funny.
So, but yeah, the way that he melted that throne, I'm like, yeah.
Big old Drogon. All right.
All right. So that's mine. Any final thoughts, and we can wrap this up, guys.
I think I've said everything I wanted to say.
Got it all out.
Yep.
This was great.
Yeah, this was.
So,
I think this is what I needed.
So next month will be you got that tab?
Yeah.
Banner. Yeah. Howl's Moving Castle. I don't think it's spelled with an E.
Oh, it might not be. I should have double checked those.
And Dracula. In all,
yes.
There's a Netflix series, a 3-part Netflix series called Dracula. Amazing. There's that new movie coming out about the last voyage of the Demeter. There is Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen. There is Renfield, where Nicolas Cage is Dracula.
No, I can't wait to
There's
see
just, and then and we can even go back to Nosferatu if we wish, and I think that came out in the 30s, if I remember correctly.
It's pretty old.
lots of options, and
Yes.
very excited.
So come join us. Let us know. You can drop in the chat. Let us know what your favorite Dracula rendition is, and what we're going to talk about the ones that we watch. And that'll be in October. We'll have some guests come and join us for that too. So that is what we have coming up, guys. I'm going to let y'all swing it around and do your outros. We'll start with our special guest. Thank you again, Adrian, for coming to hang out with us.
Do my first, Adrian?
Thank you. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, do you need
to yeah. Okay. Go for it.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, Natalie Locke. Natalie Locke on YouTube, and I do flash fiction on a regular basis, and I got a June 2024. I'll have a flash fiction prompt book published under Inimitable Books with Chandra Arthur as well. So
nice.
Sometimes.
Hi guys. All right, Adrian.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. This was a load of fun. One of my favorite book series ever. One of my favorite TV series up until a point. So it was an absolute treat to be here with you guys and talking about all this. I love it very much. For anybody who is watching this on the replay, since I think everybody in the chat knows me right now, but go to booksbyadrian.com, sign up for my newsletter, and you will get this short story absolutely free. And it will lead you to want to buy this Mamma Jamma, which is not free. And you can get it everywhere that books are sold. Just go to booksbyadrian.com and you'll find the links to both. You can pick them up, ebook, paperback, and next year I hope to put out a hardcover edition and maybe even an audiobook. We'll see. I'm working on all that stuff. Thank you guys for having me. This was great.
Awesome. And Ben?
Yeah, I'm Ben Pick, Writing to Write, Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors every week, and I hope to see you there. I think everybody currently in the chat is already a fan, so...
I think it's hilarious that you still call it questionable writing advice when you give really good writing advice. It's like really great writing.
Dude, that's my tagline. It's who do I listen to? It's they keep changing the name, but it's a whole bunch of Brandon Sanderson was one of the people on the podcast for a while, and now it's just, it's shipped over. But it's 15 minutes because you're in a hurry and we're not that smart. And so it's like these the industry, some of the best writers in the industry, and
like
they
self-deprecating.
Exactly. So I learned from that.
I like it.
Well, it's great. And it works because then people are listening. I'm like, no, that's actually really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I had my expectations pretty low, but he's pretty good.
Exactly.
And I'm the Vixen. You're on my channel. Thank you guys for coming. We're gonna do it again. Again, stay tuned for the upcoming episodes that we're gonna do. We'll be here September and October, and then you'll have to just keep staying tuned to see what we're doing after that. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks everybody who hung out in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to a lot of comments, but we knew we had a lot to say and a limited time to say it in. But thank you all so much. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.